Hello and welcome to another D&D Stories. I'm your host, TheWriter, and this is the show where I sit here and regale you with all the tabletop gaming stories and remember when something cool happens. So, we've returned once more to Kobold Mountains, and our heroes just arrived at the southern Kobold ruins. Yes, the Kobold apparently, many years ago, used to build permanent structures. And our powerless cleric and his friends have come to visit this place to find a relic of patience, so that he might reach atonement and get his powers back. So, our heroes creep up on the southern Kobold ruins, or at least where it's supposed to be, and find that it is at the bottom of a canyon. So, if you remember, like Indiana Jones in The Last Crusade, the Canyon of the Crescent Moon, they had that temple built into the canyon walls. It was kind of like that, but it was like a series of houses and like a big granary that was tipped on its side and a great big temple, and they peer in from the top of the canyon, and there's a kobold here and there with shovels, with pickaxes, just kind of either trying to unearth the place or looking for relics or weapons or whatever it happens to be. The kobolds of yore were apparently a bit more advanced than they are now, so they figured if they could dig up some old weapons, some old magic items, whatever it happens to be, they might stand a better chance of conquering and holding the current place where they live, the Kobold Mountains. So, our cleric suddenly decides that he needs to go in alone. That even though he asked his friends, please come with me and help me finish this quest so that I might get redemption. And he goes, I'm going to do this alone because a man's got to do what a man's got to do, or something like that. And they're like, really? You brought us along for no reason? It's like, well, I needed help to get across the plains, but, it's a ruin, and, we're level 7, and those are kobold down there. They're not going to give me too much trouble. And I say, as you're looking down into the canyon, you see that there is a man among them, a human man. This is our 4th player, which I've gained another 4th player. This one, a vetted person who is competent and paying attention and stuff, unlike Brittany the cleric. And Maron, the sorcerer, is an archaeologist and a utility sorcerer, meaning that instead of taking damaging spells, he took a lot of utility things like lock, knock, personal rune, flight, situational things that would serve as tools instead of damage dealing things for battle. Utility sorcerer. Now, it must have been one hell of a diplomacy roll, because as our heroes show up, he's standing there talking with the kobold in Draconic, I'm guessing, and helping them excavate the ruins. So he's got the archaeology streak in him, and he's helping them line up old relics and metal spears that didn't rust in the past 1,000 years, and all these other different things that they've been looking for. There's tableware, ancient crystals that sparkle by moonlight and not by sunlight, and they've got a pile of junk, but they know there's still good stuff in there. But the kobold refused to go into the temple because it's sacred ground and it's cursed. And, the ancient kobolds of yore wouldn't want to be disturbed by the modern day, unclean masses. They've evolved giant eyes and stuff like that. And they're not like their kobold ancestors. So they don't want to go into the temple. Maron, being a man instead of a kobold, is free to go in and out and to just bring them whatever he can find. But, by the law of D&D dungeons, it's going to be hard for him to go in by himself. It'd be better if he had a party of 3 or 4 buddies. So, enter our cleric, who decides to take with him one of the magic items they found, a gem of brightness. A gem of brightness is a big, fist-sized gemstone that can also act like a light or a bullseye lantern. But it also comes with, like, if you hold it out, like, aggressively, it becomes a blinding spell. And if you remember, kobolds are dazzled in mere sunlight. So they found this gem of brightness and kept it because kobolds are really easy to blind, and doing it on purpose with a weapon is even more particular and more potent to disable them during battle, because they come in with sheer numbers. Oh, I blind them with the gem of brightness, and then you've got a free round basically to hack at them. But the cleric takes the gem of brightness and goes, "Don't worry, guys. I'll signal you if something goes wrong." So he sneaks in the dead of night. Mauron is asleep. The kobold are all down for the night. They're in the canyon, so they're not exposed to, like, direct sunlight. But the cleric, like, sneaks down, like, the donkey path down into the canyon, and, you know, he's wearing freaking robes with chainmail underneath, so he gets minuses to all of his moves silently. But he gets down there, and he finds that the temple is under guard. There are 4 kobold there with spears, basically just making sure that none of the diggers wander in the dead of night. But they see him coming straight away, and he's like, "Gem of brightness!" And he waves it in front of all 4 of them, and they throw their spears at the same time, and spears just go in all directions. They don't hit him, so he just, like, runs inside as fast as he can, and they stop on the threshold. Because, you know, it's cursed kobold. How dare you go into sacred kobold land? Of course, they're not. They're shaking their fists and their sticks at him, but they're not chasing him. Because, you know, kobold knows what's in there, and they're not going to risk their necks just to get some trespasser. So they stand there, like, shouting obscenities while the cleric turns the corner and goes on in. You know, "Go get Mauron. You got to go chase that guy and bring him back out." But, Our cleric, you know, having used the gem of brightness, that's like the signal for the rest of the party. So they come piling down into the canyon, and all the kobolds start waking up, and they're like, everybody's surrounded on all sides. So it's like 3 or 4 level 7 heroes against a smattering of, like, kobold diggers, kobold warriors, kobold this and kobold that. There's a bunch of them there. Maelstrom must have sent them to, like, again, to excavate the ruins for weaponry and ancient artifacts that could help them in their efforts. But there were quite a few of them there, well more than enough, but it would be bloody either way. So they're kind of, like, staring at each other for a while. Until Mauron pops up, and he's like, "Who are you people? What are you doing?" He's like, "We were sent by the Hierophant of Dakota Fields to find a relic of patience here in the kobold ruins." And he goes, "Well, you know, these ruins are sacred to the kobold. You shouldn't just be stealing shit." And just, like, there's probably, like, a treasury somewhere. If the kobolds took something from somebody, it may just be sitting in a closet somewhere gathering dust. You know, not all the relics might not be specifically kobold relics. He's like, "You're right." So the party kind of slips inside as the kobold are, like, staring after them, pointing their sticks and spears. They're like, "Mauron, make sure they don't mess anything up while they're inside." And right away, our knight makes, like, a solemn vow. "Don't worry, we're not going in here to deface anything or wreck the place." Sir Landon says we're going in here to look for a particular object to help our friend, and then we're leaving. You know, think of it as like a holy quest of healing, dear kobold. And then they turn the corner so they don't have to talk to them anymore. And Mauron follows them in to make sure they're not going to just destroy the place. And it's a short dungeon. There's no monsters in there. There's a couple of traps. There's some locked doors with riddles written in Draconic, and if you get the riddle right when you're standing on the right tile, it opens the door. It's a holy place. It's not full of, like, shambling zombies or giant displacer beasts or anything like that. It's what I call the empty dungeon or the riddle dungeon, where players have a chance to just, like, walk through the whole thing, and there's riddles on every other door, and every riddle they get right, they get a reward. You know, they explore, like, lore-wise things that are things that haven't been revealed to them yet, like the Kobold were an ancient race of great builders a long time ago, and thusly the great structure of this temple. It was Kobold built, and they waged wars. They had farms. They lived out in the daylight, and according to all the pictographs, they had much smaller eyes. They weren't dazzled by sunlight. They didn't live underground. They had cities basically out far away from everybody else. And at one point, some cataclysm happened, or the nations of men and elves fought them to a standstill, or fought them and pushed them back, and they became verminous and lived underground. They had to abandon all their great structures and cities and flee underground. And 1,000 years of living underground gave them these giant bulbous eyes. And, they haven't been able to do much in the ways of building or technology or things like that, forging iron and steel or anything, because you can't do that underground. You would suffocate. So the Kobold were basically fought back to, the Tribal Age, the Stone Age, and 1,000 years has not been kind to them. So, as they're running along, like I said, answering riddles, falling into traps when they get the riddles wrong, opening doors when they get them right, they eventually come across a big hourglass, big, dinner plate sized, proper, really does last for an hour, hourglass. And I go, Cleric, let's call him Jason. I go, Jason, this hourglass is filled with diamond dust. And he goes, really? And he goes, yes, this is the Kobold relic of patience. Someone could just pick this up and probably sell it for, and then he rolls his appraise, 120,000 gold. And he goes, 120,000 gold for this? And I laid the ultimatum in front of him. I was like, what do you value more? Fallen cleric, do you value your cleric powers the most? Do you value the 120,000 gold you could get? I mean, he's got a few levels in fighter by now, so, and if you know 3.5, fighters are basically defined by their gear, unfortunately. So 120,000 gold, he could be a fighter and get all the fun toys and not have to worry about being a cleric ever again. Or he can take the relic back to the Hierophant and get his powers back. So I was like, that's for you to decide. Here's the relic that you were looking for. And, Maron goes, is that all you were looking for? Just that little hourglass? And he goes, yes, that's it. And of course, Maron has knowledge history, but for some reason does not have appraisal on his skill check stuff. So he doesn't know what he's looking at. But the cleric, for some reason, did. He had knowledge, religion, and appraisal and weird things like that. But it's his character, so I'm not going to question it. But he goes, all we've got to do is take this back to the Hierophant, and I can receive my atonement, my reset button, or whatever you want to call it, to be forgiven for my sins and wield holy magic once again. And they go, okay, so let's get out of here. And they head out, and the Kobold by then are back to doing their jobs, and a couple of the guards come up and did they wreck anything, Maron? Do we need to fuck them up, Kobold? And he goes, nope, they didn't really touch much of anything. And I think I'm going to go with them, actually, Master Kobold. Thank you for having me here at this archaeological dig of yours. I hope you find more of the things that you're looking for. And he goes, was there anything interesting in the temple? And he goes, well, a few chests. It's just as decrepit in there as it is out here. Not a lot to report. And I go, yeah, other than the freaking hourglass. And I go, roll your, or the Kobold, rather, rolls his sense motive and rolls pretty low because he's a Kobold. And they walk out, all five of them. Remember, Tiberius Tygar is there as well. All five of them walk out with the hourglass in tow. And they're like, yes, we got it. And, nobody died. Nobody, the dungeon wasn't super scary. That wasn't too bad. And the cleric's like playing with the hourglass as they go like back and forth, making the diamond dust fall between the two chambers, and goes, gosh, that was a lot easier than I thought it would be. Now we just have to get back to Dakota Fields, and this little subquest of ours will be over. I was like, all right, we'll make it fast. Just like roll me one fate check to make it from the southern ruins all the way to Dakota Fields. This subquest is kind of over. Roll me a D100. Cleric rolls 1. Of course. And we all know what's on the 1 in this campaign. It's the green dragon. So guess who comes down from on high, screaming like a freaking buzzard, bigger than he was before. So now he's huge sized. He's 3x3 on the grid. Much bigger than he was before. And they go, oh shit. So they whip out their weapons. And he's like, I found you again. I tracked your stench across the mountains, across Dakota Fields, and, southward to the nearby Kobold ruins. And I finally caught up with you. It's like, this time I'm gonna fucking murder the lot of you. And the battle goes about as badly as you might expect, because fighting a dragon, on an open plain where there's nowhere to run, there's nowhere to hide, there's no cover, there's no water, there's no elevation. It goes about as badly as you might expect. The best way to fight a dragon is either in an enclosed space or when you've got the high ground, because, again, the acid breath, the complete fuck ton of damage that he can do to you just like running up and meleeing with you is more than enough to knock the entire party on its ass. So like the Tiberius is splayed out on the ground with 0 health, and freaking the cleric goes flying, and even Sir Landon, who was like tanking his little heart out as a 7th level knight or whatever it happened to be, gets knocked on his ass and knocked out. So again, it's just the ranger who's left, who was the furthest away. And I'm like, the green dragon turns towards you. You are the last one standing yet again, Madam Ranger. And I go, Michelle, what are you going to do? And she goes, I put on the collar of tolerance, and I take the gem of brightness from the cleric. And I use the gem of tolerance to look like a kobold, because there are kobold nearby. It's not going to turn me into a green dragon. And I go, yeah, you're kind of right. I go, it turns me into a kobold, and I'm going to use the gem of brightness to wave about in the sky like a beacon, and it's like late night, early morning. And I'm going to try and bring down Barlisle. And Barlisle, they had heard beforehand. Let me backpedal a little. Barlisle was a gargantuan golden dragon said to guard the Dakota Plains against all forces of evil, especially those from Kobold Mountains. But the Dakota Fields are, several hundred square miles worth of just open terrain, and the chances of him being nearby enough are minuscule at best. And I go, all right, Barlisle the Broad-Shouldered really hates kobolds, so, if you look like a kobold with the collar of tolerance and you shine this light, if he's flying around up into his eyes, he might dive bomb into your face. And Michelle goes, yeah, but he'll also see the green dragon and probably go for him first. And I go, all right. And I put, the chances of Barlisle being there on, 98, 99, and 100 on the percentile. I was like, there's no fucking way. And I roll it triple zeros, 100% out of 100. And I go, wow, okay. So, descending out of the clouds from on high is a massive golden dragon who blasts lightning out of his mouth, and the green dragon just explodes into gooey parts and bones and flesh in all directions. You're standing, you're covered with gore and blood. You're standing in like a crater at this point. I whip off the collar of tolerance so I don't look like a kobold anymore. I was like, the green dragon knows what freaking 40d6 of lightning damage smells like now, and it smells like death in all directions. And I go, he basically blasted the green dragon into a giant glassy crater. And she goes, do I get XP for that? And I go, we'll talk about it later. And I go, Barlisle the Broad-Shouldered lands and says, I saw your beacon, young woman, and I see that your friends are worse for wear. And he waves a massive clawed hand for, it's like cure light wounds or whatever to bring everybody back to consciousness. And of course, everybody immediately goes down on one knee before this massive golden creature, basically like a god to them. He's the biggest, oldest dragon they've ever seen, and he guards this entire region. That's just how powerful he is. But he's not above picking off kobolds if he sees them waving a light on the ground, apparently. But Green Dragon was a little more interesting for him, apparently, because he blasted him into freaking chunky salsa in all directions. And he goes, young lady, what has happened here? And they tell Barlisle all about their quest for their cleric's redemption or atonement quest, whatever you want to call it. And he goes, a worthy quest indeed. What got you mixed up with this green dragon? And of course, they tell him, we've killed him like 3 times now, and he keeps coming back, and he keeps coming back bigger. And he goes, well, I'm still quite large compared to him, so if he gets up again, I'll just blast him again. And he goes, he doesn't stay dead for long, my lord. But I don't think you'll see him in Dakota Fields again because we're not going to be here. He was chasing us. And they let him know all about the situation in Kobold Mountains. And while Barlisle doesn't particularly care what happens in the mountains, now he knows to guard the western side of his territory a bit more because the Kobold are getting brave and coming down into the foothills and sending dragons and all this kinds of different stuff. They tell him about Maelstrom. They tell him about what happened in Loggington. They let him know all this stuff. And he goes, well, don't worry. Dakota Fields and the town of Dakota Fields is under my careful watch. Now go in peace and, try not to get into too much more trouble. And Michelle kind of leans down. He's like, can I recover any of the green dragon scales? Like, she's got a giant bag of monster parts at this point. And I go, you get like a couple of handfuls, but that's about it. And they're like, my God, Michelle, you've got to stop and make all this stuff into some magic items. You've got like just this duffel bag full of body parts at this point. Teeth and claws and skins and stuff like that. And they go, yeah, you're right. So they bid farewell to Barlisle the Broad-Shouldered, and he sets off to do his regular patrol, or whatever you want to call that. He was the lord of that particular land. And they head back to the town of Dakota Fields. And they go, well, gosh, what do we do first? We have a lot of different stuff to do. And they got their asses kicked by the green dragon, so they have to go, they rest and recover, and let's see. I have my notes here because it was so much stuff. And Jason, our cleric, takes the hourglass to the Hierophant. And he goes, Hierophant, I have returned from my quest. And he goes, well done, Cleric Jason. Have you learned anything from your quest? And he goes, I've learned to be patient and to try and do things, in a more merciful way than before. And he tells them about how he got into the temple by like blinding those kobold instead of just straight up killing them. So it's a more merciful way to get by them, etc., etc. And he goes, well done. That is a bit closer to our ideals and ways of thinking. On the morn we will use the hourglass to perform this ritual, and you will get the atonement that you have so earned, or redemption, or whichever you like. And They go, okay, so that ritual is going to take all night and all day the next morning because it's the atonement spell. It's high magic, very, very powerful juju that we're going for here. And the Hierophant takes the hourglass and like unscrews the top and gives it to Jason and goes, here is your new holy symbol, one of patience and mercy. And he turns the hourglass upside down into like a bowl or something. It's going to take an hour to get all the diamond dust out. And he goes, go meditate and bathe and be at peace with yourself. Eat some food. You've been gone for X number of days now. We will come and get you when the ritual is ready. So by then, Tiberius gives Sir Landon the boots of the springing tiger, which lets him go a bit faster when he's on horseback and doing like charge attacks. The ranger, Michelle, decides that yes, now is the time to cash in all of her monster parts. So she takes the displacer beast's skin and she gets a cloak made. She takes all the teeth from the dragon and the displacer beast and the distractions and all the everything that she's ever killed before, and she gets it made into like a gnarly like tooth necklace. And I go, you need to pick a primary tooth so it'll decide what the necklace does. And she goes, I pick the displacer beast tooth. So now she has like 50% displacement. Which I think meant, like, if she's gonna get hit with damage, she can flip a coin, and, if it lands on heads, she just doesn't take damage at all. She displaces, because her necklace and her cape let her do that. And then she goes, well, what about the green dragon scales? Can I still make, like, a bra and panties out of that? Or if I got enough to make more? And I go, you can make a bra and panties if you want. And I go, it's acid resistance because it's green dragon scales. So she's got acid resistant panties and acid resistant bra, and yes, of course, and that's awesome and fan servicey. And she goes, can I make anything else out of those? And I go, you don't have enough to make like a breastplate because your character is very tall and you've got X amount of like pounds of scales. And I go, you could make like gauntlets or boots would be enough, and you measure that by value or weight when you've got raw materials. So she had enough raw materials to make bra, panties, and boots. So she ended up with like 15 acid resistance at the end of the day and 50% displacement. And I was like, Jesus, nothing is ever gonna hit you ever again. And she goes, yes. I was like, all right, I'm gonna go. And I've killed all these things, and I've got all my rewards. I'm gonna go get laid. I'll see you boys later. And she heads off, and the whole party kind of goes silent and goes, "What, really?" And she goes, "Yeah, shouldn't be that hard." So our our aspiring dragon slaying huntress, a ranger, goes off to like the nearest tavern. Hey baby, you ever been with a dragon slayer before? Pulling on her collar to show the green dragon scale bra. And I go, yeah, you've pretty much got your pick of the guys. You probably don't even need to roll much of diplomacy. She's got a really high charisma. So she's pretty damn hot. And she's wearing like all this stuff that says she's killed all manner of magical beasts. Displacers, dragons, distractions, all kinds of nasty stuff. So she is definitely high on the hotness chart. And I go, okay, so you've pretty much got your pick of whoever's there at the tavern, other adventurers, the bartender, the bard in the corner, whomever you like. And she picks and chooses for a while and gets a room and is like, my job is stressful. I just killed a dragon again. The thrill of orgasm will take we'll take the edge off. So I was like, okay, that's gonna be like your afternoon or whatever is being up there. So I think she picked like the bard or one of the jugglers or something, one of the entertainers there at the tavern. So she ends up on her back with her ankles up by her neck while complete stranger, but the guys do it all the time too, so it's no different. I was like, by the time you pass like your 5th orgasm and your squealing is telling everybody on the first floor exactly what's going on, you pass out. So, that is, 4th or 5th orgasm, that's your day. You're not going to wake up until like dusk. And she goes, yes. Do I get any XP for getting laid? And I go, shut up. Fine, roll a d20. 12. You get 12 XP for getting laid. Good job. And she goes, yes. And so, she's cashed in for all of her magic items. Gosh, that's what? Boots, panties, bra, necklace, cape. She got 5 magic items all at once. So she decked herself out straight away. Meron didn't have a lot to do. I think he ended up at another tavern to kind of gather information, see if there were more refugees, more people coming in from Kobold Mountains, or if there were any more tales from like trade caravans and stuff. He's kind of become a part of this party once he hears about what's going on. This seems a little more interesting than dusting off old relics and stuff, because if Maelstrom has an artifact that can resurrect people on the fly, he'd like to know more about that artifact. So he needs to see Maelstrom in person, and so this party seems to run into him a lot. So he joined them for the sole purpose of learning more about Maelstrom's gemstone. Which, hey, everybody needs motivation, that's fine. Sir Landon, like I said, ended up with Tiberius and Beano. He got the riding boots or the riding gloves or whatever it was. Yeah, the boots. Riding boots of the springing tiger. So they cashed in a bunch of their money. They got new potions, a couple of new magic items, things like that. And finally the time comes. Our cleric is going to reach redemption or atonement. And the Hierophant comes along. They get like a big wok. And they sit the cleric in it naked, and they pour like cedar oil over him, and they sprinkle him with powders, and they bring the diamond dust, and they fling it on him. And if you know your spell components, diamond dust is actually used for the shield spell, or not the shield spell, the mage armor spell, which is why it's so expensive. It adds like +4 to your armor, for X amount of time, which is why that spell is so rarely cast, because it's very expensive. But they had 120,000 gold worth of diamond dust, and they just poured it on his head, so he looked like a freaking Twilight vampire sitting there covered with oil and freaking bits of crystal. I was like, Jason, don't move, because your skin will give out before those diamonds do, and you're covered with them. So So they draw the runes, and they do the big magic circle, and they bring in like 6 nuns or priestesses to do the hymn of the God of Mercy, and the Hierophant is standing there, and he's got like the big important staff that he can cast from, and all the big juju comes out for this, because atonement is a very, very high-end spell, last I checked. Or at least like true atonement, redemption, the thing that wipes the slate completely clean. And they go, okay, so these 6 nuns and the Hierophant, they do their chants, and they draw their chalk lines, and they light the candles, and they sprinkle you with the diamond dust and the cedar oil, and they baptize you in the fires of new purity, and they throw the match, and you catch fire. And then he goes, ah! And he goes, it doesn't hurt, Jason. Is I sit there on fire. And he goes, it burns away your impurities and the deeds of your past. You're now on an even keel. You are back in your God's good graces, because you've had the atonement spell cast on you. So everything is now on the up and up. Your cleric powers have been restored. And he's like, yes, I did it. My side quest, my side story, I was successful. And I was actually very impressed with him, because, 120,000 gold is nothing to sneeze at. And, again, taking levels in fighter, he could have just been a fighter with a big coin purse to spend on whatever he wanted to gear himself out. But no, he wanted to stay a cleric, and he became a cleric again. I was very proud of him. Let's see. Meanwhile, while all this is happening, Tiberius comes to Landon and goes, Landon, something else has come to my attention here in Dakota Fields. And this was like a sub-quest. While everybody else was doing something, Landon needed like something to do on the side. So Cleric was doing his ritual, or Jason was doing his ritual, Michelle was getting laid a lot, Maron was hitting the taverns for rumors. Landon needed something else. So on the fly, I came up with this sub-quest for him. And he goes, Landon, the rumor mill tells me that there is an artist running around in Dakota Fields doing lewd paintings of the local nobility. And he goes, lewd paintings? Really? Like pornographic paintings? And he goes, yes. And apparently, he has seen me here in town and has seen me well enough to do a painting of myself and my wife, the Lady Tygar. And he goes, what was her first name again? Natishka Tygar. And he goes, oh, okay. So he painted, like, a picture of you boning your wife? And he goes, yes. And he goes, ugh, okay. What do you want me to do? I want you to track down this painting and destroy it. If you find the artist, bring him in as well. And Landon's like, okay. And let's see. I got to check my notes because so much is happening all at the same time. Right. So Landon goes off like into the marketplace. Like if this guy is painting paintings, he's probably trying to sell them. So he goes off into the marketplace. And, you know, there's fruit vendors, jewelry, you know, fresh fish, we catch 'em, you buy 'em. You know, would the man like a necklace? A pretty necklace for a pretty lady in your life, and stuff like that. And he goes, oh, God, it could be anywhere. Is there anybody selling art here? And I go, no, Dakota Fields really doesn't have, like, the aristocracy that would justify, like, having a marketplace cart that's just paintings, much less pornographic ones. And he goes, damn, all right, so somebody here's hiding it, I'm willing to bet. Like, the marketplace, you know, selling a high-end painting like that, it would have to be here somewhere. So, and he looks around and he goes, you know, what all's here? And I named down like 30 different carts. And he remembers very suddenly that Beano, while he was ailing, you know, telling the future, the information superhighway will be mounted on your dashboard. Invest in Apple. Invest in Apple. And he goes, is there an Apple vendor here? And he goes, and I go, yes. And he goes, that's where it is. So he goes over, and sure enough, this apple cart is like mahogany with freaking velvet pillows for the apples to all lay on, and it looks very out of place just to be selling fruit and stuff. Like normally there's like a carpet or something, or they just lay them out on wood and you pick and buy the ones you want. But no, this one is way too fancy, and Sir Landon's quick eye shows him that there are hinges where there not ought to be on this apple cart. And he kind of goes over and like leans into this apple cart guy's face and just intimidates him into the ground. And he goes, you wouldn't happen to have any artwork here on your cart, would you? And he's like, maybe. I don't know. Like he's run into some kind of fence. You know, this guy is not the artist, but he's got it. He's got something. And Landon goes, really? And he just like kicks the cart and sends like a couple of apples down, and the panel pops open. And Landon like is still like holding the guy with his eyes, and he leans and pulls out a long scroll, and sure enough, he unrolls it just a little bit, just enough to see like the top of Lord Tiberius's head. And he goes, I thought so. And he goes, I'll be confiscating this, and I'll be sending you in as well. And he goes, wait, please, I'm just a fence. I'm just an apple. You know what? I can pay you off if you want, or all the apples you can buy, or anything like that. And he goes, I don't think so, buddy. And he pulls out the manticles and arrests the guy. And you think, well, you know, he's in service to a lord. He can arrest people. He's not really a police officer, but he's close to it. And he arrests this guy and brings him in. And, he's only got to, like, briefly flash the painting to the local guard to show, this is what's going on. And, the Lord of the land, Lord Tiberius Tygar, doesn't like this. This guy needs to be punished because he's fencing off this propaganda and stuff like that. So he puts the apple cart vendor behind bars. Where's your boss? He's already moved on. He goes from town to town. I bought the painting for 50 gold pieces. I was going to sell it for 75 and make a profit. So the artist is already gone, so they're not going to catch him anytime soon. But he does have the painting. And Landon goes off to one side, because you would too, and stands in an alleyway and kind of unrolls it all the way and gets an eyeful of Lord Tiberius having sex with his wife. And he gets to see this image of Natishka, and she's very strange looking to him, because she's not like a normal woman. He was expecting like this lithe enchantress looking woman, but she's got long black hair and yellow eyes and bright pink skin, and she's got like gold and gems and jewelry dotting her body. And if the painting is to be believed, she also has like a barbed tail. She's clearly not human. And Landon goes, gosh, she's exotic. And that was like the only word that he could come up with. And I go, it's pretty much all out for you to look at and enjoy for as long as you've got that painting. But you remember, Tiberius wanted you to bring him the painting so he could throw it in the fire. And Landon's like, all right, I memorize everything that I'm looking at. And I roll it up and I take it back to Lord Tiberius. And Tiberius like rolls it open and in a private room, with a fireplace. And it's like, she looks wonderful. And I wonder how that artist knew what she looked like. He must have seen other paintings of her, because she was rich and powerful. There were probably other paintings of Natishka elsewhere. But I wonder how he would have known how beautiful she was, disrobed, and, looks just like her and everything like that. And he kind of, like, moons over the painting for a while, because his wife is gone. It's implied that Natishka was dead by then, but you're probably thinking, probably not. She was resting in that space between spaces at the end of Goddess Wheel, so she's probably still out there. But for the sakes of this story, she was treated as dead at the time. She was no longer with us, so that could mean several things. And, Tiberius and Landon kind of have this moment, and then they both realize that they're both oogling his wife in this painting at the same time, and Tiberius kind of, like, rolls it up. He's like, well done, Landon, and hesitates for a while, because you would too, and then throws the painting into the fire, and it curls into ash and collapses. And he goes, let me get you another reward from House Tygar. And he fishes for a while in his things and gives Landon, what was it, riding gloves? Yeah, gauntlets of riding. So it basically gave him like a +3 to riding. And Landon had a horse and did like charging attacks now and then. So he had like boots of riding, or boots of charging, and gloves of riding, and he got a new tabard from Lord Tiberius because his old one got melted. So he's wearing a lot of orange stuff now, because the colors of House Tygar are bright orange and black. So Landon's like earning his own like armor set over time. It's very cool. And he is, of course, completely pleased with Landon, and says, come. Beano is doing much better now and has been asking to see you. He still sees you as a great hero. So they go in. By then, Beano was awake. He's got bracelets on him from the Hierophant and the other priestesses. And Tiberius says, with these bracelets on him and the seal that's been put onto his magic, he no longer has those visions anymore, and he's doing much better. He's like, oh, it's Sir Landon, yay! And again, still has the complete hero worship going on, but he's got basically has like safeties on his wrists now. So when he turns 18, the seal on his magic will come undone. He can take off the bracelets, and he'll be like a fully fledged oracle. Basically, like I said, he's got one level in Oracle. He's just like, he needs to have a bigger, stronger body to handle the raw, swirling magic of the cosmos and all that stuff. And he goes, one of Beano's predictions came true. Is like the invest in Apple thing. That's where I found the painting of you and your wife fucking. And he goes, not in front of my son. Shut up. So, they sit and visit for a while, and our cleric is in another part of the cathedral, like getting new vestments, getting his holy symbol made into like a chain with a necklace, or a medallion with a necklace. So he's got the new patience symbol to remind him to stay his hand before he does anything hasty, that kind of thing. Let's see what happens next. They all get together after a while, like the next day after they've made all their magic items and got all their powers back and rested and gotten laid and all that good stuff. They had their respite of like 12 or 16 hours, and they meet the next day with Lord Tiberius for like a big banquet, a celebratory dinner, or brunch, I guess, for Beano's health, for Jason's powers, for their startling successes so far. They have not seen a kobold in X amount of days. That makes them happy too. Let's have a big brunch for this. And Tiberius chats with them about the seemingly immortal great green dragon, and they're like, by the time we see him again, he's going to be giant. Like the 4x4 on the grid. Like, he's going to get bigger and bigger and bigger until we can't handle him anymore. And by then they've gotten storyline XPs, they fought a few other things. They're approaching level 10, but once a dragon gets up into the 12s and 15s in level, like they outstrip players completely. They're dragons, what do you expect? But they're worried because they have such a tendency to freaking roll ones on their travel checks and on their what happens when they're moving from A to B. On a scale of 1 to 100, and they throw ones all the time. It's like, he's going to outstrip us really quickly. We need to figure out a more permanent solution to this. And Tiberius kind of like steeples his hands for a while and listens to their woes, listens about all the items they've lost, all the people that got boiled, about Barlisle blowing the green dragon up, about every time Maelstrom comes by, he can just resurrect it. They need a permanent solution, or it's just gonna get bigger and bigger and bigger until nobody can handle it, and then what'll they do? So Tiberius says, there is one thing I think may help you. And of course he goes into a long tirade about, House Tygar has its hands in enchanting shops, all over the region. There could be 3 dozen of them. And some of them you're like, oh, you enchant this plow so that you never have to sharpen it. And others are like, you enchant this sword to do fire damage. Everything from A to Z. But there are some older relics, some older, deeper magics that might help with something like this. And they go, well, what do you mean, Lord Tygar? And he goes, well, back home in Frunz, which was where they started, back home in Frunz is the crypt of House Tygar, where all the people that came before my wife, before Beano, even those that were married into the family like myself, are buried, or interred into the walls, or sarcophagi, or whatever you like. It's a large complex, but in it also are some of House Tygar's greatest servants, and he gestures to Landon, who has the decency to blush. And our greatest servants, if they don't leave any sort of will and testament behind, are also buried there for their loyalty and greatness. heroes of yore that protected my family members throughout the ages. And he goes, okay. So one of them, it was buried with a sword or something we can use? And he goes, yes. You're not going to like it, though. And he goes, what's the matter with it? And I described this sword as, it's made of onyx and coated with glass. And it's this great gemmed black sword. And they go, a black sword? And I go, yes. If you kill someone with this black sword and then stab the dead body, you can rend their soul out of the corpse and shatter it. And then it will not go on to the next life. It is not able to be resurrected by any holy magics. It is just gone from existence. You basically tear apart their spirit and they are no more. And they go, oh my God, that's awful. That's like really high-end necromancy. And he goes, yes, that's why we buried it. It was, there were terrible things in the far, far past that had to be dealt with once and for all. And once they were all dealt with, the black sword of House Tygar was buried forevermore. And now that something like this has come up again, we may have to go to the crypt of House Tygar and retrieve this black sword, use it on the green dragon, and then shatter its soul. That way, your maelstrom cannot resurrect him again. He will not come back anymore. And then once that's done, we can put it back, and that'll be it. And my players kind of look at each other. Jason, the cleric, is visibly upset by this because soul-shattering sword. But they're like, we don't have any other alternatives. It's like, we've tried burning the body. We've seen it get exploded by lightning. The gem that Maelstrom has is too much. It's like the spirit or the soul or whatever is the only thing we have to go after. It's like we could seal it away in another dimension, but none of us have that kind of magic, and nobody else around here does either. So this is pretty much our only option. And they go, okay, so how are we going to do this? And Tiberius says, we must go back to Frunz, across the Kobold Mountains. And everybody goes, ah. Because that's where all the Kobold are. He goes, we must go back to Frunz, to the crypt of House Tygar, and then we must take my son Beano. And he gestures, and Beano's got like a mouthful of scrambled eggs. Huh? What? Talking about me? And we must take Beano into the crypt, for it is magical. And so long as somebody with the blood of House Tygar leads us, none of the traps will go off, all the doors will open, etc., etc. We won't have anything to worry about. This is not some unholy place with shambling skeletons and necromancers making their homes. It's very well kept. It's sealed up tight with magic. So Beano could go and touch the doors, and every set of doors would spring open for us. And he will probably have to unseal one of the coffins or something, and we can grab the sword and go. And they're like, Tiberius, that's really dark magic. That's, you're hunting a rabbit with a bazooka. And it's like, well, bazooka's not in this setting. Shame on you. But this is the only option I can present you with. Out of all the magic items that I have access to, this seems to be the only one. So they decide, let's go there and let's think along the way. And again, the cleric is not for this. So he doesn't have any better ideas, but he's voicing this the entire way. Like, this is, unholy magic. This is deep, dark, bad stuff. It's like, yeah, but it's for a good cause. Well, that makes you no better than them. And they argue and they fight the whole damn way. But they get horses and they say, if we're on horseback, maybe we could just gallop past most of the things. It's like, well, getting from one side of the mountains to the other would require 2 fate checks. So you've got 2 chances to get across unharmed. One from Dakota Fields to Loggington, and then from Loggington to Frunz. Let's make it a short trip so you're not spending the whole gaming session traveling. And I go, okay, who's feeling lucky? You know, because the last travel check we made was a 1 out of 100. And I go, you can't possibly do it. You cannot. And our ranger goes, I'm feeling lucky. I've got the 50% displacement and all the acid resistance and all this stuff. And I go, I'll roll our travel check. And I go, okay, what's your marching order? And they go, we put Landon up front. And I go, okay, Beano is going to be up there with Landon because he thinks you're like Superman. And, you know, they're going to put our ranger in the back and, you know, all this different stuff. They arrange themselves, like, accordingly so they're not, like, side by side to get, like, volleyed with arrows. And I go, okay, ranger, throw it. 1 out of 100. Throw me the 2d10s. She rolls it. 1. And I go, you guys are an impossible... You guys are a mathematical impossibility. 1 out of 100, 2 or 3 times in a row. What the... I reach over and I grab the green dragon figurine again, and I basically had to make like a piece of cardboard because I didn't have like a giant green dragon. I had like a large one, and then I got like a piece of cardboard and painted it black so it was like a 4x4, and then I stuck the dragon figurine on top of it to represent that size. And I go, he's back, and he's giant. And he goes, there's 5 of you, well, 6, counting Beano. And he, you know, as soon as he sees you coming, he dive bombs out of the sky. He must be watching the road for those who dare enter Kobold Mountains. He dive bombs out of the freaking sky, you know, plants his feet and sprays you all with acid as like a fight opener. And of course, Landon has the knight ability Shield Other, which means as long as he's standing next to somebody, he can take half the damage that you would have taken otherwise. But that's not enough to save Beano. Beano died on the spot, like face full of acidy dragon breath, melted into absolute goop, and the little like wooden Landon doll floated by in the pool of blood, like off the road and off to one side. Beano, no! And just Tiberius, like, my son! And everybody at the table, oh shit! And, you know, roll initiative, and the fight is on. Like, everybody took acid damage out the front except for the ranger who dodged all of it, but everybody took acid damage out the front. Beano, you know, being the 0 level child, had 5 hit points and no armor, did not make it. And this boss fight goes on in the middle of the road. The horses all go down hard. Those spindly little legs of theirs, no, they had to be put out of their misery later. But the party is thankfully, you know, 5 people instead of, you know, 2 or 3 like they have been. And an earnest, like, boss fight goes down. Tiberius, like, runs up to a tree with his big sword and slices through it and pushes the tree down on top of the dragon. And it's fighting tooth and claw. And they're throwing fireballs at it. I shoot it in the face with my arrows. You know, I bash it with my shield. And they do all this stuff. And, you know, again, it's an earnest boss fight. But they had just gotten all these new magic items, all these new potions. So they managed to actually get a clean kill out of him. Like, it's not tiny. You don't have help. He doesn't have help. They were an even match for each other, and they killed it outright. And, of course, Tiberius runs up after it goes still, just like a madman, just like whacking away on its face, like crowbarring its brain out of its skull, and they're, like, slowly backing away while he's, like, just beating his fists on the corpse of this thing that just murdered his son right in front of him. And just like the screams, the cries of this poor man would be in their nightmares forever. And Michelle looks to one side and sees like the wooden Landon doll completely worshipped this knight guy. This little wooden Landon doll like float by in like the blood and acid and water that was on the roadside until it slowly slips off the side of the road. And the entire table, like everybody has their head in their hands, just like, oh God, oh no, 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 no. Because this kid has been around for like 7 sessions of this campaign, worshiping the ground they walk on, giving them food, giving them like sneaking a potion from daddy's cabinet, doing all these little things for them. He painted a wooden doll to look like Landon. He looked up to them like freaking superheroes, and he died there on the roadside. What do we even do? Like they don't even know. They look at me. They look at the DM like, what do we even do now? Beano, god damn. Just like, should we take a break? No, we've got to address this. We can't even, And they go, and after a long time, Tiberius, of course, goes off on Landon. You were supposed to fucking protect my son. He rips the tabard off of him, throws it in the mud, and stamps on it. Does all these just horrible insults. You can't really blame him, but takes it all out on Landon, because Landon was supposed to be, his knight, his son's hero, and you let him die, and just didn't let him die. It was just a lot of acid damage, but goes off on him and goes off on him and goes off on him. And like in real life, the store owner, because we were in a gaming store at the time, kind of leans into the room like, are you guys okay? And he's like, yeah, it's just something in character. Don't worry about it. Oh, okay. It's making sure you guys aren't like brawling in here or something. But Jason, who has his chin in his fist, kind of goes, why don't we go ask the Hierophant for help? And they go, what? He goes, well, he can cast the atonement spell. Surely he can cast, like, resurrection, right? And they go, resurrection? Really? It's like, we don't have a body. And they go, Tony, can we do that? Can you do resurrection without a body? And I go, yeah, the highest end resurrection spell, which is called True Resurrection, doesn't require a body. It's really expensive, though. So it's, and we flipped open the books. It's like 20,000 gold. It's just this outrageous sum of money. It's like, well, we just turned in that hourglass that was like 120,000. I said, yeah, but that was the diamond dust, and you used that on Jason, so you don't have any money left from that. And they go, well, we can, and they think about this for a while. It's like, we've got to go back to Dakota Fields, because the Hierophant is the only one that's going to help us, or who can help us in this regard. So they go, well, we can just sell a bunch of magic items, right? So they sell things off, and we ran by the RPG rule of like 50% of whatever it's worth. So if you sell something that's worth 1,000 gold, you get 500 for it. So that was just the way the setting worked. But they sell a bunch of magic items, a couple of rings, some amulets, things they weren't using, a couple of, I think Michelle the Ranger sold her necklace. So they gather up like this giant bounty, this 20,000 gold pieces to get all these exotic, crazy components for true resurrection. And they go to the Hierophant and they tell him what happened. He's like, you people and your freaking tragedies everywhere you step. And he goes, yes, we just worked hard to help this boy. We will have to help him again. You've got all the components, so and your quest is true, so I cannot turn you down. Just like come back in a few days. And they tell Tiberius, this is what's happening. We've got to sit for 3 days. We're going to bring your son back from the dead with holy magic. And, Tiberius, of course, didn't think of that at the time, but, it's going to be some nasty business. If you die, especially if you die a violent death, you go beyond the veil, you go to heaven, you go to hell, whatever it happens to be. or purgatory, I guess, whatever astral plane, and then you get violently brought back by the magic of a god that you may or may not worship. What are you going to be like when you come back from beyond the veil? This kid is going to be completely traumatized. Like, he's like 13. He's got magic seals on him. He's had rituals performed on him. Now he's died, and they're going to bring this poor kid back. I hope he's not just like insane. I hope he doesn't just like break under the stress of all the horrible things happening to him lately. Because my God. And they hand off the 20,000 gold worth of components to the Hierophant, and again, it's magic dust and leaves and golden acorns and blessed water and all this other garbage. The laundry list of things that you need to cast true resurrection, because it's not alchemy. Because we've seen what happens when you try to resurrect somebody with alchemy. It costs an arm and a leg. But they hand off the 20,000 gold worth of stuff, and the three. I'm checking my notes. Sorry. The 3 days goes by while the Hierophant does his meditations, and he goes and he gets like the platinum holy staff of mercy and grace out of the vaults below the cathedral, and they bring in a dozen nuns, and they mix all the magics and draw all the runes, and they go into the deepest sanctuary of the cathedral where nobody's allowed to go if you haven't been a part of the church for 20 plus years, etc., etc. And on the dawn of the 3rd day, our heroes gather once more, with Tiberius there, who has, of course, not been sleeping. He's got the veins in his eyes. He's not been eating. They've just been waiting with bated breath for so long. And the Hierophant walks out with a small body, like wrapped in a sheet, like just cradling this body over his shoulders. And he goes, "I have brought your son back from beyond the veil, Tiberius Tygar. Be grateful to our God of mercy and love and light." And slowly, like, gently hands this 13-year-old off to his father, who, of course, falls to his knees and just weeps over this little boy. And, Jason the cleric is standing to one side, just completely awestruck that this is the true potential of holy magic in his church. And how dare he ever stray from this path when such miracles can be done with the powers of his God. And it's like it re-solidifies his faith. And Landon kind of leans over to like my DM screen, and like he goes, I didn't declare a god when we started. I'm gonna declare my god now. And everybody else is like, same. So they converted 3 or 4 people, bringing this child back from beyond the veil. And they go, "Is he gonna be any different?" And I go, "Well, you'll have to see when he wakes up." And they go, "Tiberius, you should probably just take him home. He may be comatose for a few days. It is a great trauma to be brought back, with a newly created body. So you need to go home to Chateau Tygar and have him rest. Have him sit and play with a coloring book or something and eat a lot of food. This body is like a day old. His eyes are going to hurt because he's never used them before and things like that. Take him home now." So they scramble. They roll the fate checks, and of course nothing happens. They scramble back across the Kobold Mountains to Chateau Tygar, and they close all the doors and they bolt all the windows, and they're just gonna, they're in a state of lockdown while Beano lays in bed and recovers. This poor child has been through so much, and the entire campaign hinges on him so that they can go and get the black sword of House Tygar. And that is where we will stop for today. So I hope you enjoyed that bunch of drama, and you will join me next time for the next chapter of Kobold Mountains here on D&D Stories. Keep gaming.
Hey guys, thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like button for me. If you want to keep up with channel updates, check me out on Facebook. And if you're feeling especially generous, be sure to visit my Patreon. Keep gaming!